Welcome back, everyone, to Startup Security Weekly. I'm, of course, Paul Asadorian, joined by Michael Santarcangelo. Not wearing your sandals today, huh, Michael?
I'm barefoot, baby. Just not going outside. It is cold.
I like that it's cold and you still don't have shoes. Like when it's cold here, we wear like thick socks and shoes inside because it's still cold.
I just don't like it. And one of my kids is like it. And we're like, my wife is always like, you need to put on your socks. I'm like, nah, she's good. She's all right.
It's fine.
She's not going to lose her foot. It's not going to leave.
That's it. So
we're at episode 19. This is awesome.
It is awesome. Man, we got some great stuff planned too. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm getting excited about. You know, it's like, it's very meta doing a show about startups, running it like a startup and talking to people and finding out what they're interested in and finding our voices and getting into the rhythm. And it's a blast. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and I enjoy your friendship and our company and these conversations and the things that result from it. So
I do too. Excited. You know, and it's interesting, Michael. Not all of the stories, the news articles this week relate back to necessarily the startup, but some of it relate back to Security Weekly and some of the things we're trying to do, which really isn't, as I've said before, not really a start. We're in our 11th year. When we create new shows, certainly, like you said, it's very much a startup mindset. So. So I'm excited to talk about some of the ones that the two of the ones that are focused on risk this week, Michael, really resonate with how I approach some things here and have been thinking about things at Security Weekly. So
let's start there. Let's go. Let's hop in. Which one?
I liked your order. Your order was good. So foolish and focused was first. And I love the question, and apparently this was a company called Bonobos. And they said, do we feel we take enough risk at Bonobos? And I think that's a question that certainly we probably ask it more when we're in a sheer startup, right?
Yep.
But I ask that question in my head all the time, sometimes out loud. Are we taking enough risk? And that's just a question that when you're running a business or, when they're starting a new podcast or a new segment, are we taking enough risk doing that? How much risk is too much? Is the juice worth the squeeze? In other words, is a constant question that comes up. So.
And what I like about that question is, and it's the top highlight in the article. I know a lot of companies that failed due to lack of focus. I can't think of one that failed because they were too focused. And so a lot of the stories for this week had that kind of interplay between the two. So wait, are we taking enough risks or are we focused enough? And that's one of the things that I've been focusing on with Straight Talk is to say, look, you gotta get rid of the stuff that doesn't work and focus on what matters. Mm-hmm. But what this is also helping me remember is, hold on though, you've got to learn. And he's got a dialogue in there of a conversation he had with somebody else to say, but look, you did that and it didn't work out for you, but it doesn't make it a mistake. Oh. I mean, there was a lot of value in this one that I really liked, and then his follow-up was the risk not taken. So they're both written by the same person, and I thought that was really just kind of interesting too.
And I think for our audience that you may not have a business that you're running or a startup that you're creating or want to create. You may just be managing, but you're managing your career. In this, all of this logic applies. Right. I mean, I think whether you're managing your career or business or a startup, this conversation about risk and how you expand and how much you focus and how you do that over time is really important to consider. And you're probably making those decisions, not really realizing that it relates back to this kind of risk question in this context, but that's really what you're doing. Do I take a risk in my career and take a new job in an area? Do I spend a lot of time researching a particular subject and not be able to do some other things that I may have as some of my career goals, and how do I prioritize? It's the same thing. When we're going through some of our shows here, do we, for example, put a lot of effort into something that isn't growing at the rate we want it to grow, or do we scale back and focus? And to me, that's one of the more difficult decisions to make as, in business and in your career.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Again, so I'm going to point to what other people do, the heavy lifting. It's one of the things I like about Medium. Top highlight. If you can't decide what to do, get on the road. You won't find the answer. It'll find you. That's an artful way of saying some of the stuff that we've talked about too, relative to the risk, which is just try it. Right. I mean, navel gazing's nice, but so like to your point, I find a lot of people get paralyzed. So we either try to do everything and be everything to everybody, or we get so paralyzed that I'm not sure if that makes sense or not. I don't know. Well, we could do this or we could do this, but what about and what I'm kind of learned from this is no, just go. Like just do it. Like and I think there's probably some gradients to it, right? So you don't have to throw everything into it. You can test the waters. You can get some experience. And to me, that's actually the key. Like this, you won't find the answer. It'll find you. Look, I got to tell you, that captures my experience with Straight Talk over the last year. My wife and I had a conversation last night. She looked at me and she said, "A year ago today, did you think that the year would turn out like it did?" Nope. No, not even close. Better, on almost every count. Like I'm really excited and I have purpose and I feel really good about it. Now, does that mean the answer found me or did I find it? I don't know, but here's what I did. I went for it. I just kept trying. I've kept innovating. I mean, I said to somebody yesterday, I've been pivoting enough lately, or at least it feels to me like I'm pivoting, that I feel like I'm on like a hamster wheel, not of pain, just of pivot. But to the people I'm talking to, they're like, you're not really pivoting, you're refining, and gosh, we sure like it. Okay, cool. All right, I'll keep doing it. So I like some of this in terms of thinking about how to do some of this stuff and working through it differently. Let me pull in the third article then from Medium that we pulled. So it was the How I Burned $10 Million So You Don't Have to. Now, what's interesting is after I shared this, I saw some folks say, "Oh, this guy's an idiot. I mean, you don't need to blow $10 million to do that." Okay. Sometimes we point these out. There was a line in here that I thought that was interesting because one of the things that I'm finding more and more is the need for speed. That's whether you're in the enterprise, that's whether you're a startup. It's about that focus, right? So we just talked about, are you taking enough risk? Are you taking the right risks? Are you learning from the risks? Are you just getting out there and doing it? And so like we keep seeing these iterations, and I would say maybe over the last 5 years it's been that whole fail fast, fail faster, right? And so now we're kind of backing up along this. But what I thought was really interesting on this was you can actually move too fast, right? So it's that understanding that, well, here's his quote. I now see it's not the speed of doing that matters, it's the speed of learning. And to learn, you frequently must slow down. To me, that's the money quote. That totally unlocked it. Yeah, it's the speed with which you can process and act and do stuff. Now that leads itself into how much attention residue is clouding you, and are you busy versus productive, and are you focused versus interrupted all the time. But wow, like the rest of it was all nice. But to me, that was, for a startup, that's the important part for me.
Oh, and remind me, Michael, I have something to tell you after the show, sort of along those lines. Make sure you remind me. So I'll keep you in on the edge of your seat.
I'm wait.
So I like this, How I Burned $10 million So You Don't Have to. That's just a great title for the article.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to do clickbait, I think it works out really well, and it works, and that's good. Some of the other ones that I put in here that we get the chance to talk about, the Silicon Hills lawyer, that was a new one to me, but I'm going to start following it. It was on this program that I really started to get this concept of technical debt, and I started to get it figured out. So then I pull this up talking about promising equity versus issuing equity, and then it talks about legal technical debt right off the top. And I went, okay, this is really kind of cool. What's interesting is I've had some conversations with people recently where some of them don't necessarily appreciate what a lawyer can or can't do for them because there's just some of that misunderstanding. But the quote here that stuck out to me is, the 10x cleanup cost of legal technical debt relative to what it would have cost to do it correctly from the start is often brutally painful. Yep. I mean, that to me was just like, wow, yeah, the way you structure it. By the way, if you've ever tried to do your own chart of accounts using QuickBooks or something like that and haven't thought about it, I find that's also brutal. I mean, mostly people just do journal entries now and they adjust it. But if you want to get it right, that takes a little bit of time. It's learning. I think the lesson in that, and we just heard this from Josh and Chris, is find experts that are good at what they do and let them be good at it, and then you do what you're good at so that you can kind of figure it out.
This is my free business advice for the day. When you have a business, the first people you should have kind of on your payroll as consultants or whatever is a really good lawyer. And depending on your business, maybe 2 or more different types of lawyers, right? And you should have a really good accountant.
Yeah.
And I mean, they don't need to be on your payroll, right? Because if you're a small, let's just say you're a single, person business, you need a really good accountant and you need a really good lawyer. And you hope that you never really need to pay your really good lawyer a lot of money, but just in case, you do need a good lawyer.
Yeah, right. Those are things that are always tougher to find under stress or later, right? So we talk about risks and risk taking and everything else. Now, here's the rest of what I thought this was good with. It was looking at equity and promising equity versus issuing equity, and it really laid out a lot of stuff. So this was like more of those, if you find yourself in that situation or you're asking those questions or you're going to go join a company and they're promising you equity, this has got a list of really solid questions, most of which I would not have thought about until I had read this. So I wanted to just at least put that out there and share it out there to say, yeah, there's some stuff here to think about. And, I found a new source to take a look at. Now, this other one, Paul, I was thinking of you when I grabbed it. So this is the one on HuffPo. 5 technologies your business should adopt right now.
Yes, I love this. I love this, and I hate this. So go ahead.
Well, the number one reason: appointment scheduling software. You and I have talked about this.
That's huge. I agree.
I'm a lover of Calendly. In fact, my world got rocked this week by them in a really positive way. They now have a GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar integration and this is what I had always wanted. So instead of, if you use that software, this is what I use when I do my coaching calls. This is what I use in the experience. So the way I had to set it up was I just had like the generic, hey, call me here, good to go, which means anybody could jump in at that time, right? There's not that I was terribly worried about privacy, but it was kind of just whatever. Now it's integrated. They have a beta integration. Mm-hmm. They let me into the beta. I've been using it all week. It's so freaking awesome. Everything shows up. I'm very happy with Calendly. And so I looked at this and I went, Now, I looked at it, so I want your take on this, but also when I read stuff like this, and this is why I love doing this program and thinking about it, 5 technologies your business should adopt right now. Cool. Which also then means these might be areas to invest in if you're an investor. These are areas that if you're the buyer, Howard, are you looking at these things? Have you considered it? And I brought that up because Paul and I have and are. But also if you're a startup, if these are areas people telling you should do, go take a look at what's out there. See if you like it. See if it works. This might be an area where some attention makes sense. And, of course, security's on it. So what was your impression?
Well, I think I like how, these are technologies your business should adopt. I think it applies to startups. It applies to the entrepreneurs that are listening to this show, whatever you're doing, some work on the side or whatever. So if we take them in order, right, digital payment forms. Yeah, if you're selling widgets or whatever, that's important. I agree. I'll expand that into you should have some kind of, as we were mentioning before, accounting software, right? FreshBooks is a really nice way to get into something really easily. QuickBooks is a little more advanced for some of your more advanced businesses and what have you. And both of those also allow digital payment forms, right? You can accept bank transfers, you can accept credit cards. Those technologies are extremely important for a business. Information security, we have whole shows about that, including this one. So we'll just kind of skip that one for now.
Well, no, you know what, though? Let's not skip it, though, because here's the thing that I noticed about this, and I want to point out that I don't think this is, there's a couple points here. So we're saying these are technologies that your business should adapt. Security is not a technology, right?
No, you're right. That's a good point.
It's a process. And then it goes right into, and there's people that are victims of identity theft. Blah, blah. Okay, stop. If this is one of the only times you see us, breach is a symptom. Now, it could be a symptom that you didn't think about security, blah, blah, blah. But listen, where I'm not just worried about how you're handling that stuff. Think about your information. Think about what somebody could do if they could get to it. I put up. I think I maybe put it in our show notes. I was invited to keynote an innovation conference, and we're going to talk about Straight Talk. And they asked me if I could do some talk about security. And I said, sure, let's talk about two things. Let's talk about innovation and security, and where I'd love to see some startups, and where I think, right, because, Paul, we cover it. I ought to be able to talk about it. But then I also said, you know what, let's go talk about the startups and this concept I've kicked around with you over the last year or two called minimum viable security, but more at a conversation level. So all I looked at here was to say, okay, let's take a look at it. But then it says, consider hiring a data security consultant to review your website for possible security breach. Yeah, listen, this is maybe something you and I should do a show on at some point.
Yeah.
How do you figure out who to trust in security? In talking about reviewing your website versus looking at your online payment form versus looking at your customer database, those are different skill sets.
Yeah.
So hold on. So anyway, good list. But so yeah, let's go ahead and skip over their recommendations for security, but say it's probably a good idea. And I'll tell you what, if you got questions, hit us up. You can shoot us on Twitter. You can send us an email. Let us know what questions you have or what suggestions you have, and we'll share that with everybody else.
The next one, the remote workers, is the one I really have an issue with, because I don't think that's necessarily for everyone in every position that you have in your company. And I think that is really on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the culture of your company, what your company is doing, what your startup is doing. And there are pluses and minuses to having remote workers, or, there's not too many minuses to having everyone working in the same building unless you drive each other nuts, right? Or you're trying to attract talent that you can get remotely that you can't get in the local area. I think there's a lot more to the remote workers than is alluded to in this article. I don't think it's for everyone in every position is what I'm saying. I think there are advantages to startups having remote workers, any business having remote workers, but there's also some really heavy advantages, especially in startup mode, to having everyone all in the same building. And I've had to realize those over time, where I worked in security, and it really lends itself to working remotely for certainly in my career path and a lot of other career paths in security. Remote workers are great. You think of a penetration tester or security researcher, fits really well. But if you've got a startup or you're doing some other kind of positions, there's a lot of great advantages to having everyone all in the same room. Now, that can be difficult depending on your geographic location. So that one I didn't necessarily agree with.
What's your take on the live chat for customer service? Is that something that you use? Do you like it? And would you want it to be synchronous?
I wouldn't be as specific as to say live chat. I would say that you need technology to enhance your customer service. And whether that's live chat, or we talked about System 76 having that great ticketing system.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I don't think they don't, to me, they don't need a live chat because they built such an awesome ticketing system. It's almost like a live chat was built in, but it's not live chat. So I don't necessarily think you should laser focus on live chat. You need awesome customer service, and you absolutely need technology to help you get there, and choose your technologies wisely.
Yeah, if we're fair about it, I think too, this is a little bit of know your customer base, because it's fascinating. There are some companies that I would prefer to just pick up the phone and call, because I know that either the complexity of it or whatever, I want that, or their experience is so good, I really enjoy it. And sometimes I want the chat, and because it's quicker, it's easier, I can do it asynchronously, and I don't want to tie up time on the phone. And I'll tell you one where I've done both is Google. When you do the Google apps, or what we call it now, G Suite, and it's a paid thing. I've actually initiated some stuff on the chat where they're like, hey, you know what? Let's set up a call. And the calls have been great. And I've done some stuff where I called, and that was also great. And they've actually been really good at following up. So I've been kind of pleasantly surprised.
That leads to an interesting segue into the technology that I'm looking for. And the Front app was a company that I have high hopes for, and I hope to circle back around with them. But I track a lot of activities in email, in Facebook, in Twitter, and in LinkedIn. And I want something that can consolidate all of those communications and let a team help respond to those to develop the business and tie into other activities as a team. team. I don't know, Michael, of any technologies other than Front that are working to do that. If people do, please let us know. I will test them, and if they work, maybe we'll bring some people from that company on the show, because that's something I've asked a lot of people about, and I don't hear a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, you want this company or this technology." So.
No, it's good. And this is too where, you mentioned some of the plans that we have coming up for the program in the new year, right? We're talking to more investors. We've had great conversations with founders of companies. I loved Chris's perspective today as a guy who could tell us what it was like on the other side to get traction or to get somebody in. There's some stuff there I'm going to go replay and unpack and think about. So, I would love, too, to talk to some folks in the enterprise. If you're the person who's buying some of this technology or interested in it, tell us some of the challenges that you're solving. I mean, clearly, between all the programs that we do together and the writing that we do, we like to think that we're covering it all, but maybe not. So let's talk about some of those things and highlight them and put them out. And so, we're going to keep putting stuff up like this and talking about it. And then, of course, all of these have security considerations and stuff. So I thought it was interesting. All right, here's another one I put up. Deal breakers. Red flags from top VCs. So the thing that I liked about this list, I mean, it's salacious in its title, right? These are the things that we look for. If you're doing this, deal's off, right? And it's one of the ones I think, let's see, if it wasn't here, it was someplace else. It was like, do you clear your own plates? Or how do you handle this? And what it's really saying is, here's how we evaluate people in the deal, right? It's not always the deal. Like sometimes in the startup world, we look at it and we think it's all about deal mechanics. It's all about, do the numbers look good on the spreadsheet? And every time I talk to investors, angel from seed money, startup, all the way up to the institutional investors, they want to know about the team. They want to know about your vision. They want to know about your reputation and your ability to deliver. So what I thought was interesting on this were a couple things, and the two that I thought were most fascinating. The two on the top really caught my attention. You send someone else to do your meeting with the investors. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just
and
a bad idea.
When founders take more than 48 hours to respond to emails. I look at that. I'm like, wait a minute. If this is important to you, it's got to be you. And you got to be the one doing it. Now, in fairness, what we've seen in the security world a lot is people in positions of leadership will have somebody else carry some of their water for them. And we think it's getting us an advantage. Well, they're better suited at it. They know the language. They can get the leverage. Yeah, it's ceding your authority. And this is saying the same thing here. If it's important to you, do it. If you're terrified of it, more reason to do it. Go get some coaching on it. Learn how to do it, but do it anyway. The rest of this I thought was interesting. Some of these things were interesting in terms of the way that you and I talk about some of it, whether you know your industry or not, whether you're grounded in reality or not. I mean, goodness, we got to bring up our obligatory Shark Tank thing, but, how big is your market? The world, there's like almost 8 billion people. No, dude, that's not your market. Stop,
Yeah, there's like a theme on a lot of these, like, it's basically like not being wishy-washy, right? You got to know your direction, and you got to have just a clear path when you go through and do your pitch and you're running a business or a startup. You can't be kind of wandering on any of these issues that investors are asking you about. And I think that is where a lot of these articles that tell you about pitches and a lot of where people get in trouble on Shark Tank is when they're kind of, wandering or thinking out loud about I think my target market is, it could be this or it could be that. And like, no, done, you're done. And having those hard numbers about your financials. There was another one in here. If the pitch, the founder is trying to convince him or herself of things, right? And I tend to now notice this in other conversations with people if they don't have like a very clear direction in what their goals are or what the problem they're trying to solve or in any of these other areas. I'm like, oh, red flag.
Yep. I mean, look, some of this, some of these I've certainly caught myself doing some of these things. But look, what I liked it as a list, right? So it's one of those things that gives you a peer into how it works. But then I said, how much of this are you doing? How much of this are you doing yourself? I think it's a good gut check. So if you think you want to go in fact, don't worry about raising money. If you think that you want to go get that first big customer or you want to go build your first 5 customers, run through this list and see how many of these you might be doing without thinking about it, because I think addressing them, or at least being aware of them, might offer you a slightly better way at it. So anyway, those are some of the stories for the week. As we've started to do more and more, and I'm trying now to put a little bit more of a lens on this, but and for this week I called it Startup and Security Notes. So I saw three things that Owler, even the Optiv thing. Owler is the one. I tell you, Paul, that was a great find on your part.
It's awesome. It wasn't me. It was actually a coworker at my previous job, Liz, that turned me on to Owler.
Well, it's been fantastic. All right, so here's the things that I saw, and I wanted your take on a couple of them, and I just wanted to put them out there so people can track it. So there's SecDo. They develop a cybersecurity platform that offers contextual investigation, alerts validation, and response remediation services for organizations. So basically, I don't know what they actually do, but they raised a $10 million Series A round. And what I thought was interesting about that was for a Series A, that's on the large side, right? We're tending to see right now most Series A are $3 to $5 to $8 million. Some people will tell me it's 5 to 10, but I don't see a ton, right? 5 tends to be. So Series A, 10 million is pretty good. And then if you go and you look at their competitors, it's CrowdStrike, it's Cybereason, it's SentinelOne, Bromium, right? So these aren't small companies in a somewhat crowded space. And so I was just kind of curious your general take on it.
I don't know if I have an opinion either way on that. I'm not familiar with the company. I think it is
it was new to me.
I think it is a big A round. So hopefully they're on to something good. I love new companies that are solving problems, and I like the scrappy ones that are going against bigger competition. I think that's great.
Yeah, I like it too, and so I thought it was interesting. By the way, I was also noting there's a lot of deals happening we're in the last month of the year, Q4. So everybody telling us, oh, the deal flow is off. Oh, it's not. Yeah, well, I don't know. There's a lot going on right now. I thought that was interesting. So same thing. Here's another one that came out. Kenna Security Risk Intelligence Vulnerability Management Platform enables organizations to measure and monitor security services. They are a $15 million Series B. Okay, that sounds about right. But again, here's the thing that I think is interesting. So I looked at them when this popped up. So and there's probably more that came in. So they're competing against Cloud Passage. They're competing against Tripwire. Really. Yeah, and that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. I looked at it, I went,
no,
what?
The competition that's listed on Owler is not always very accurate. Kenna was formerly Risk.io, so they compete with like RiskSense and a bunch of other companies that basically take in vulnerability data from multiple different sources and allow you, they say they contextualize it, but many of them, I think where their struggle is up to the user to help in a huge way to contextualize it, and there's a lot of work on the end user to do that. And everyone's program is so customized. Where I've seen, in fact, these type of companies get displaced is organizations, larger ones in any case, develop their own process to contextualize vulnerability and patch management type information. So.
Does this round surprise you? Does it look good? Because
they must be doing something right if they did get if they're still around and got a $15 million Series B, because I even with the limitations I just spoke of, it's a big problem in the industry. So they're obviously able to help clients with this issue. So they are competing against the big vulnerability management vendors as well, who try and include this functionality in the product, but often is not customizable enough for folks, which is why they'll look at something like a Kenna.
That's good insight. All right, last one of the week that I thought was interesting, not so much on the startup face, but still big. So Optiv. Right, so Optiv was Accuvant and Fishnet, and they came together and formed like a super company, and it looked to a certain extent to be like, hey, we're going to form the new security super company, and you don't just have to go to a big four, we're going to be able to do all these types of things. And from all accounts, has been pretty successful. Then they announced about a month ago, okay, we're going to file for an IPO. And then this week it was, by the way, we just got acquired by KKR, which means Blackstone sold their majority stake but retained a minority stake, and now KKR has them, and OPS, the IPO is canceled. I just find that fascinating. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but like it's like if we go look at exits, typically your exit is either you IPO or you get acquired. And the way that this all came about was Blackstone, who has a pretty extensive security portfolio themselves, got two companies and mashed them together, and then said, "Hey, now we're going to go build something big." So the IPO was logical. That made sense. All of a sudden, it's KKR. So then I dug into that, and it was like, oh wait, KKR has Darktrace, Ping, and Silence. Oh, so that's interesting. So I wish I had more insights to be able to say, whoa, no, that's really rare or that's really big or whatever. So if you do, shoot us a note. Let us know. Let us know what you think of it. But the thing I'm starting to notice now, and we're going to talk more about this in the coming year, is how do you size these investments, and what's happening in the venture space and the institutional space. So a lot of times when we look at the startups, we're talking about the small startups, and we're looking at pre-Series A or just got their Series A, and there's a lot of great stuff there and a lot we're going to keep looking at. But I've started to notice now, too, that some of the more traditional places have their own venture funds set up focusing on cyber. They're building portfolios. They're stacking companies. They're looking at the synergies. I know that's a word we should all drink to, but they're doing a lot of that. And so we're going to keep calling it out as we see it, because I think it's worth paying attention to.
I think it's interesting. Some of the feedback and issues that I see with large MSSPs, we saw SecureWorks go through a lot of rigmarole with, IPO, not IPO, acquisition. Well, Dell acquisition, then spun off into IPO. And I find it interesting. I think what's frustrating for customers that want to use MSSPs is when you get feedback from other people who are using the same MSSPs, it's like 50-50 split. Half of them say, hey, our experience is great, and the other half are like, our experience is crappy. And I think that's because as an MSSP grows, they take on really large customers. They build specific teams to handle just those customers and give those customers great customer service, and then the other half of their customers are suffering on the customer service side and aren't getting what they need. So it's tough to navigate and figure out who the best MSSP is for you because of those issues. And on the back end of it, there's acquisitions, mergers, and IPOs that are complicating the culture and business processes to these large MSSPs, also putting that struggle on them as well.
Yeah, and you're right. And so if you look at SecureWorks and you look at, going all the way back to the days of Lurk and everything else, what's going to be interesting then too is that I think the space is still pretty volatile, and what we're going to start seeing now is portfolios focusing on it. We're going to start seeing investment money trying to figure it out, and it's all going to be interesting. So it's an exciting time for us. In terms of our startup grind and some of the stuff that we're working on, some of the big things for me this week is I'm having more conversations, and I have finally gotten back to my own routine of publishing and writing, and I would invite people to check it out. I'm trying to answer questions actually now, and I'm following a strategy where I'm putting it out on my website, and then I'm also sharing it on LinkedIn. So if we're already connected, I would love a thumbs up and a like and a share if you liked it, and if you didn't, let me know why or what I can do better. What's also kind of cool for me, Paul, is that even though I said I'm doing all these pivots, I'm starting out to figure things out a lot better. People have really helped me through these conversations. One of the things we talked about in an early show was you got to go out and have 20, 25 conversations. I'm still engaging in those conversations, but wow, the language is changing, the excitement is changing. I'm having great calls, and that's helping me see both what people need and what they like, and I'm able to do more of it. So I'm excited. I will say one of the things I wrote about this week, and I just want to touch on it real quick. A lot of people have said, well, no, man, I like what you're doing with Straight Talk, Michael, but I don't think the people around me are ready for it. That's not Straight Talk. If you think that the people around you aren't ready because it's going to be a little brash or you're going to have to set them up right and tell them how it is, that's rude. That's not Straight Talk. Straight Talk actually acknowledges with the other people who they are, what they need, and you're using empathy to make it accessible and understandable to them, and then you're working together to get where you need to go. So I wrote about it, and I put it out there a little bit to try to define it a little bit better, and I'm going to keep doing stuff like that and work with people, so I'm kind of excited about that. How about you, Paul?
We are in the initial stages of getting our cloud platform going, which is very, very exciting. It's a lot of work. Initially, it's a lot of like paperwork, business type stuff, and that stuff has to get done to enable you to move forward and take care of our initial customers, which is very exciting as we get those as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're back again next week with more stuff and goodness to share with everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Startup Security Weekly. See everyone next week.